YouTube, we're back with the beautiful Aero Commander UMX by Horizon Hobby, part 3 of the scale details we're adding today. So far we got the antennas, we've got the white, the trim details on the props, which just look really gorgeous. Already added the silver on the nose cones, or the spinners rather. And then this is some windshield wipers, which is kind of a pseudo scale detail. And we were talking about that right before the video cut out. And one thing you can do on those that works really nice is you can put a little bit of silver or white to highlight the fact that they're there. And that's what we were ending up with right before we ran out of memory. So cross those off. Double tip props. 2 plain antennas are done. So got these vents, which are dry enough to handle now, and looks like we might have a little bit more white touch-up to consider. But those things are going to go right up here. And so I got to take a look at them on there and see if I'm going to need. And there'll be obviously 2 of them. I think maybe we'll touch them up just a little bit more. So this time we'll get, I'm not sure 100% how I want to do this yet, but we'll get a little bit more picky on it. Because we want it to be done right and we don't want to have to do it 3 times. The other thing is we have this horizontal stabilizer thingy that's going to go in there. And I don't think I want to cut it again. I just don't think I want to make it again. I think I'll just glue it in as is. And then touch up with paint as necessary, paint and glue. So we'll just slip that in there real quick. Okay. With the understanding that that needs to be probably pulled forward. And we'll take a look at it. Yeah, that looks pretty close. Of course, you got a nice busy backdrop there. That's pretty cool. So we'll see how that does. And you know, it's halfway tempting to just say leave that thing in with a pressure fit in the event that we don't like the way it performs, but I don't know, I think it might be wise to just put a little bit of glue in there. Just be done with it. Have it marked off the list. But while we're talking about that, why don't we get the paint done on these other pieces. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do this time is a little bit different. I'll just hold them in my hand and just touch them along the edge. Then set them down onto another piece to prop it up. I'd like to be able to get both sides done if I can. These scale details are killer though, guys, because if you're anything like me, and I'm guessing you are since you're watching my video, they will suck your life. You'll end up with very little time to go out and fly if you let them get out of hand. But it's really fun. So personally, I would rather be flying, but I would always be thinking about these awesome little details that I want to add. Of course, they don't add anything. In fact, they probably take away from the flight performance if you really get down right to it. But let's just be real, guys. Seeing is believing. Okay, so we'll leave this handy for when we're done with this top portion. I'm going to get some thinner, get that paint off of me. Clean hands. And now we're going to glue this little stabilizer detail in here, which is going to be just a cool little detail. That's all it is. Nothing more, nothing less. You could probably use it as a trim tab, to be honest, but I don't really need a trim tab. Okay, so the hard part is I gotta slide this out, try to minimize the damage to the paint. Okay, this is the medium CA again. Just putting a little bit of glue there. We're just gonna pull it in. And what makes it, and what doesn't, doesn't. A little bit of glue on this side. We'll just work it back and forth until we get it exactly positioned where we want. We're just going to leave it alone. Just double check it from a couple of different angles. Okay, so far so good. Now this is just a piece of plastic, so it's super easy to bend, which I had considered that as being a potential conflict later too, but I think we'll survive. Okay, so we'll just do a little teeny drip here, just let the drip run up and down there. I'm gonna switch hands and do it left-handed, guys. Whoa, that sounds awkward. One drip, slip it back. Okay, cool. So now we can just kind of let that work for a minute. Normally I would spray Kicker all over it, but in this case I don't want to do that for a variety of reasons. And now, as pretty as this plane's going to end up being with all these cool little details, makes me kind of not real thrilled with the way that looks. But let's be real, that's a practical detail. It needs to be there. Helps light the way. Okay, so you remember that one prop blade right there, the one that gave us problems? One thing you can do is, now that it's dry, you can sit there and just scrape it with your fingernail, try to get that last little bit off. But honestly, I think I'm just going to leave it. I think it's going to be fine. It's on the back side. You really honestly don't see the back that often. And even in a display configuration, you're probably still not going to see the back of it very often. So I'm not too terribly worried about it. Okay, great. So the next step is to small horizontal stab on top of vertical stab, which I'm sure there's a name for it. I just don't know it, guys. And I apologize. I'm usually pretty good about coming up with these things, but I just don't even know who to ask about that. So if one of you guys knows what the heck this little thing is called in real life, let me know. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little vertical stabilizer. It could be an antenna, could be something else, but it's sure looking awesome. Okay, so now let's talk about wheels. Obviously those wheels aren't big enough, and just wondering about the easiest way to paint those. Silver is finicky. I've found that if you can get away from having to actually paint silver, it's advisable. Oh, and here's my exploded drawing. Okay, so this is the drawing of the nose wheel. And you'll notice it's not that far off, so maybe just painting the hub silver would be sufficient to get that to look right. And then this, of course, we're going to have to paint quite a bit of it, but then we're going to have to paint the inside and out. And not 100% sure what's the easiest approach. Painting silver, like I said, can be a little bit finicky. I'm wondering if we need to maybe put some glue on there first to give it something hard to adhere to. The other option is we could use a piece of plastic, but then that gets heavy. Let's just try the silver first, and we'll see how it turns out. And hopefully we don't need to do anything fancy. One thing I really appreciate about silver is it's easy. It's very viscous and easy to paint with. But that sometimes means it runs a little bit too easy. Now, I'm guessing this is not going to show up very good on the dark wheel. Okay, so I'm just going to get a little teeny bit. And we'll just put a little drip. Now, it could be that this stuff will eat the foam, and that would be a real bummer if it did. But you know what, guys? I'm going to be your sacrificial lamb. How about that? So now at this point, it's looking like the paint is showing up just fine. If I could just control and manage the paint application. Whoa, that scared me. Looked like it was rolling off the edge. I think it was all in my head. If I could just control the application, then I could just roll the tire like this. Then that would be sufficient to give me the larger rim look without actually having to make a real larger rim. That'd be plenty good for me. Now obviously that's not on center, but just from a 10,000 foot view it looks great already. But it needs to be on center, guys. It's got to be. And it can't be that triangular shape like it is now. Which I don't understand exactly why it does that, but probably the amount of paint I have on this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take the silver. I'm going to lay it down somewhere close, like right here. And I'm just going to let that spread so that I have a nice even coating on my wheel, or on my applicator here. I'm surprised how crisp and clean of a line I'm getting here. Okay, whatever, I guess I gotta go around like this. That looks really cool, guys. That was really not too bad. It's certainly not perfect, but it's gonna be better when I'm done. And it's something I can replicate too, so when you do something on these planes and you got to do it like 4 times, you better make sure you do something you can replicate 4 times. Otherwise it's going to look really bad. I have a lot of paint on there right now. I'm actually a little nervous about that. I got to take some of that off. I'd rather waste paint than have it screw up a wheel. Okay guys, so I had to reposition you a little bit there. My camera battery was getting low, so we'll pick it back up now. Where we last left off, I was working with this and I had a little extra, a little too much silver paint on there, so I was nervous. Trying to make it nice and straightforward there. So as you can see, that wheel, especially from distance, is just going to look like it has a bigger rim on it, which is pretty awesome. It's still rolling totally free, which is good. So now the nose wheel might be a little bit tricky in terms of getting the paint on there without making a mess. I think I might have to use a brush for that. So I'm going to do the other side first, and you can see how much better that looks, guys. Just look how much better that looks. Just that one wheel even makes a huge difference. I'm surprised how big of a difference it makes. I knew it was going to make a difference, which is why I'm doing it, but I didn't know it was going to be that big of a difference. Real pleased with it. So I'm going to grab a new Q-tip, take a fresh dip of silver, run it back and forth to make sure it's nice and even. The paint's evenly spread. So now I'm just walking it out, the color that is. It's hard to get it back once you put it down on these wheels. You can touch it up with black paint, but again, it's foam being painted by a Q-tip. It's not a real precise process. And see, the trouble you'll run into is that these little whiskers form. So I'm going to take another dip of silver. The really good thing about silver is that it just tends to flow so good. So if you're careful about the way you get it applied, you'll be able to get it to flow on there decently. And you don't want to get too crazy and make it look like there's some sort of a low profile tire on here, like it's a race car, because that'll look kind of fake. Fakey fake too. That worked way easier that time. I just had a little bit more paint on there that time too. So maybe that's the ticket, just put a little bit more paint on there. Now this spot makes me nervous, so I'm trying to get it cleaned up. Okay, so now I'm just going to go through and soak up some of this paint because it looks like it's puddling a little bit. I cannot believe how good that covered the black. I didn't really think it would work that good. I mean, I knew it was going to work, I just didn't think it was going to work good like that. Okay, so now the nose wheel, maybe we can try and get that. We got a little extra paint there that went around on the tire, so I'm gonna slam the wing into the styrofoam there. Just kidding, guys, that was an accident. I'll grab a fresh Q-tip, and I'm gonna take this tire and just try my best to walk it around. Doesn't look like it's probably going to come off of there. So what I might end up having to do is just either live with it or widen up that rim paint job just a little bit there. So the wheels definitely have what looks like bigger rim now. So this side I'm going to redo that just so it's a little bit wider to match the other side now. And this is where you could get into some trouble again, just wanting to try to get them to match, and eventually you get to the point where they're both like really, really big. And again, to go back to our example, we've already gotten a little bit bigger than the example. That's the main wheels. So far, it doesn't seem like this foam is getting eaten at all by the silver paint. That's enamel, which is somewhat surprising. Sometimes there's a partial reaction that'll happen, and so you'll end up with a little bit of recess going on there. I've been pretty fortunate most of the time. I've had it happen to me one time when I was building my well, actually it was I forget what it's called, the Viking. I used A10 glue on the Viking. My Freewing A10 had a foam safe glue, or at least I thought it was foam safe because it came in a foam model. Different types of foam. Not necessarily the same. Okay, so now I'm going to soak up a little extra here. Just pick it up so it's not like crazy amounts of extra. And blammo whammo. There it is. Which looks pretty cool. I'm happy with that. That's pretty cool. Not 100% exactly perfect, but if you're expecting that, you're probably not going to get it. So now we have to get the inside wheels painted, and I just don't really see that happening without taking these out. I hate taking these landing gear out on these planes. It always makes me super nervous I'm going to break something else. But it probably would have been handy to have the wheels off for other steps. So now I'm sort of kicking myself for not having done it already. So I am going to take and grab my silver paint, recoat the tip of the Q-tip, just like we've done a number of times already. I'm just going to come back here and just try to duplicate or replicate that exact same size. So starting in the middle, spin the Q-tip to spin the wheel. I can tell you that's a lot easier to control with this thing off of here. Okay, so now I'll take the mostly dry side, just work this around, soaking up the extra. Okay, so again, not perfect, but it's going to work for our purposes. Okay, so we can set this aside, and that little silver detail really made that landing gear pop. I got a video on how I built those, if you're interested in trying to copy that. Okay, so now I can switch my landing gear back over, and I don't know if you guys have ever seen these things go in and come out, but they They're very simplistic to take in and out, but someday you'll be putting them in and they will rip out of the wing, and that's just the way it's going to be. So take them out as infrequently as you can tolerate and still enjoy the plane, because like I said, you will eventually rip out that mount. I am giving you the 100% guarantee, because it's happened to me on every single plane I have that's of this configuration. And most of the time I try not to take them out for that reason. But I mean, it's very tempting to just pop these landing gear out every time you go out and fly, just for really making it look cool. The F-16 UMX is the exception to that. I do take the landing gear out on the F-16 UMX when it was flying, which currently it's not flying for a variety of reasons. Okay, picking up some new silver paint here. We're going to get this other wheel done and then we'll be done with the tires, which is pretty cool. I'm excited. It's not wanting to spin well this time, dang it. Well, if it's going to hold still, that's fine too. We'll just do it that way. So as you can see, guys, it's pretty easy to do it this way too. It's actually a lot more controlled, seemingly controlled. Okay, so now I'm going to just soak up the excess. And there you have it, guys. And just drop it right on the carpet. Alright guys, so we're going to try to get this nose wheel painted. So that one I got even more silver paint around the rim, which is a bummer. But I'm just going to grab a clean Q-tip and we'll take a look and see if that stuff will come off of there. My guess is it won't, and it's not. Obviously you can't use thinner on this, so once you got paint on there, it's painted. So I'll probably just leave it, it's not that big a deal. And so the other thing I was talking about earlier was how we used white to touch up the windshield wipers for the extent of just kind of making them seen a little bit better. Well, if you look at it, you can see those white streaks are barely visible still. So I'm going to take this silver and just touch the plastic, just so that they show up just that ever so slightly. And then I'm going to take the clean side, I'm going to pull a little bit of the color off. And that's just going to help those things to pop out a little bit more. Because really, what's the point of a scale detail if you can't see the thing, right? So now the other thing that we need to get ready to do next is going to be our list tail boom numbers. The wheel rims are done. Nacelle vents. We got to get the nacelle vents mounted. So that'll be our next step. So we'll zoom out. We're about ready to run out of memory here. So my guess is it'll be part number 4. And you guys, of course, I'm sure you'll probably watch just whatever bits and pieces of this video series you like. And hopefully you won't watch the whole thing, because it's pretty long. But we'll be coming back and finishing. I'd really like to get this done now if we can before the video runs out. But I don't want to set expectations too high, since I don't think we're going to make it. Okay, so basically that's the way those are going to look. Now I just need to get them exactly where I want them to sit. We're going to get those babies glued on there. Those aren't perfectly located, but look how sweet that looks, guys. All those little details, they just add up to a really, really cool finished product. And like I said, I don't mind if Horizon doesn't do every single little detail, because some of these little ones are fun to do. But, you know, the flaps and LEDs, yes, we want you to do them, Horizon. Alright, we're going to call it quits for now. It's part 3 on the Aero Commander UMX scale detail build. And we'll have one more coming for you. And that should conclude. We're going to do the tail number, and we're going to get these glued on. So come back for more. Don't forget to like and subscribe.